A single mom in Harlem returned a billionaire's wallet. The wallet was sitting right there on the wet pavement of Fifth Avenue, half tucked beneath the rear tire of a black Rolls-Royce Ghost that had just pulled away from the curb in the October drizzle. Taraji almost missed it. She was walking fast, head down against the cold afternoon wind blowing in off the Hudson, one hand gripping the strap of her worn canvas bag, the other holding a brown paper bag that smelled of the roasted chicken she had bought on sale at the corner market. Dinner for her and Zion, her 7-year-old son who was waiting at home with Miss Gloria, the neighbor who lived 2 floors up. She wasn't looking for anything, but her eyes caught it anyway. A Berluti wallet in chestnut brown, lying open like a book someone had dropped in a hurry. Hand-stitched seams raised along the surface, the kind of leather you didn't find in ordinary stores. Rain was already darkening the edges. Taraji stopped. She looked around. The Rolls-Royce Ghost had dissolved into the sluggish stream of midtown traffic block ahead, already just a dark shape in the gray afternoon. The sidewalk was crowded. Office workers heading to the subway, a delivery guy threading his bike through the gaps, 2 young women with earbuds and walking fast. Nobody was looking down. Nobody was stopping. She picked it up. The leather was warm in her palm in a strange way, as though it had been held by a careful hand just seconds before. The inside was immaculate. No crumpled receipts, no jumbled cards, no disorder of any kind. Just a stack of $100 bills. She counted 5 before she stopped herself. A black credit card with no visible limit, the name Marcus Devereaux embossed in silver, and a small white card tucked behind it. A phone number only, no name, no title, no driver's license, no family photos. Taraji stood in the middle of the sidewalk while people moved around her like water around a stone. $500 in cash. That was before whatever the black card could do. She thought about the electric bill she had pushed to the back of the kitchen drawer last week. She thought about Zion's winter coat, the broken zipper she had been meaning to replace since March. She thought about the letter from the landlord on Tuesday, polite in language and clear in meaning. Then her phone buzzed. The screen said, "Zion. Mom, I'm waiting for you to read tonight. Miss Gloria said you're coming soon, right?" His voice, small and clear, knowing nothing about the wet sidewalk, nothing about the expensive wallet in his mother's hand, nothing about the decision being made right now. "That's right, baby. I'm on my way." She hung up, looked down at the wallet, then up at the gray Manhattan sky. Not because of some abstract moral philosophy, not because she was afraid of consequences, but because she did not want her son to grow up with a mother who had once chosen wrong in a moment when no one was watching. She tucked the wallet into her canvas bag, tightened her grip on the roasted chicken, and kept walking toward the subway. Taraji Okafor, 34 years old, had not planned any part of her life to turn out the way it had. Not the marriage to Darius, the man she had loved at 23 and who had quietly left at 28. No arguments, no drama, just an afternoon he didn't come home and she realized she was no longer surprised. Not the child. Zion had arrived the summer before the marriage finally dissolved, the one thing from that marriage she would never regret for a single second. Not the 4th-floor studio apartment in Harlem with no elevator and a radiator that knocked every night like someone impatient at the door. Not the accounting job 3 days a week for a community non-profit on 125th Street, enough to keep the lights on if she was genuinely careful, not enough to breathe. What she had planned, or at least dreamed, was different. The accounting degree she had finished at night school in the 2 years after Zion was born, sitting at the kitchen table while her son slept in the next room. The textbooks on the shelf above the closet, covers worn but margins filled with her small, precise handwriting. A path forward, a version of herself that wasn't always 2 weeks from the edge. She was working on it. That was what she told herself every morning while she packed Zion's lunch and calculated whether she could afford the good orange juice or had to take the cheap kind. That evening, after dinner, after Zion showed her a drawing from school, an octopus with 9 tentacles, because 9 was his favorite number. After she had read 2 chapters and turned off his light, Taraji sat back down at the kitchen table and opened the wallet again. She spread the contents across the table. 500s, the black card, the white card with the number. She opened her laptop and typed Marcus Devereaux, New York. The results came back immediately. and she sat still for a moment longer than she had expected. Marcus Devereaux, 41 years old, founder and CEO of Devereaux Capital Partners, one of the most prominent private equity firms in the country, with a portfolio stretching from biotech to energy infrastructure. His name appeared on the boards of 3 hospitals, a performing arts foundation, and a university investment committee. There were photographs of him at charity galas, shaking hands with senators, speaking at a podium in front of hundreds of people in expensive suits. All close-cropped dark hair, eyes that met the camera with the look of a man accustomed to being watched without particularly enjoying it. Net worth, according to the most recent estimate she could find, north of $3 billion. Taraji looked at the $500 on her kitchen table. Then she looked at the white card. She thought about not calling. Thought about it seriously, the way you think seriously about something you already know you won't do. The money would help. It would help enormously. But it wasn't hers, and she had known that from the moment she lifted the wallet off the wet pavement. Knowing hadn't stopped her from thinking about the electric bill, about Zion's coat, about the landlord's letter. Knowing didn't mean not feeling, but feeling didn't change what was right. She picked up her phone and dialed. It rang 4 times. She was preparing herself for voicemail. Yes, a man's voice, direct, not cold, but not warm either. The voice of someone accustomed to calls that had a point. "Hi," Taraji said. "I'm sorry to call so late. My name is Taraji Okafor. I found a wallet on 5th Avenue this afternoon, around 52nd Street. The credit card inside has the name Marcus Devereaux. That's me?" A short pause, like a recalculation. "Where are you?" "Harlem." "You have the wallet." Not quite a question. Everything is still in it. The silence this time was longer. Not suspicion, something else, careful and surprised, as though he was adjusting a calculation. "Can I send someone to pick it up tomorrow morning?" he asked. "Of course. Or I can bring it somewhere. Whatever is easier for you." "I'll send someone to you. What's your address?" She gave it to him. He read it back correctly without asking twice, which she noticed, for reasons she couldn't quite name. They agreed on 10 o'clock. He thanked her. 2 words, clean and direct. The call ended. Taraji sat for a moment with the phone in her hand, looking at the wallet on the table. She restacked the bills, set the card back in its place, folded the wallet closed, and set it beside her laptop. She told herself that was the end of it. Someone would come tomorrow, pick it up, and that would be that. A small story, unremarkable, something she might tell Zion one day. A lesson in doing the right thing even when it cost you something. She turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. She did not expect, when she opened her door at exactly 10 the next morning, to find Marcus Devereaux standing in the hallway himself. He was taller than in the photographs. That was the first thing Taraji noticed. The second was that he had come alone, no assistant trailing behind him, no driver visible in the corridor, no entourage of any kind. Just a man in a dark charcoal wool coat holding a small arrangement of white flowers wrapped in brown paper that looked like it had come from a real florist, not a hotel lobby. Taraji had prepared herself for a courier. She was wearing her best jeans and a gray sweater she considered presentable. She did not have the expression she had planned. Composed, casual, the face of someone entirely unbothered by returning a billionaire's wallet. Instead, she stood in the doorway for 1 second, hand still on the knob, recalibrating. "Mr. Devereaux." "Mrs. Okafor." He held out the flowers with a directness that made the gesture less awkward than it might have been. "I wanted to bring these myself. I hope that's not an intrusion." "It's not," she said, which was true. "Please come in." He stepped inside and took in the apartment the way people do when they are trying not to appear to be doing so. A quick survey, respectful, not evaluating. The space was small but clean. Taraji had made certain of that. There were crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, a pair of small sneakers placed neatly by the door, and in the middle of the living room, a chessboard. Zion had been working on his game for weeks. The pieces arranged in 2 waiting lines. "Tea?" Taraji offered because it seemed right. "Please," Marcus said. She put the flowers in the tallest glass she had, a pasta jar, but she used it without comment and put the kettle on. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, the only table in the apartment, and looked at the chessboard in the next room with what appeared to be genuine attention. "My son's," Taraji said, coming back with 2 mugs. "He's at school." "How old?" 7. She set a mug in front of him and sat across the table. The wallet was there between them, exactly where she had left it the night before. She pushed it toward him. Everything is there. I didn't count the cash beyond what I could see, but I didn't take anything. He picked it up without opening it. "No," he said. She looked at him. "I had a feeling." He slid the wallet into his coat pocket. People who find something and return it usually say right away that everything is there. The ones who've taken something say it too, but they say it differently. Differently how? You said it the way someone says something slightly annoyed to have to mention it at all. Taraji considered that. I wasn't annoyed. "No," he agreed. "But you were matter-of-fact about it. Like it was obvious." "It was obvious," she said. He looked at her then, not the glancing, social kind of look, but a direct one, as though he was deciding something. It lasted only a second, but it had weight. "The cash alone was $500, he said. "I know. Most people would have kept the money and returned the cards. Some people would have kept everything and thrown the wallet in a trash can." "I'm not most people," Taraji said. She said it plainly, without pride, the way you state a fact about the weather. Marcus wrapped both hands around his mug and was quiet for a moment. Outside, someone in the apartment above was dragging furniture. The radiator knocked twice, then settled. "I'd like to do something for you," he said. "Not as a transaction. I want to be clear about that. But this matters to me, and I'd like to respond in a way that actually means something." Taraji felt the familiar tightness across her shoulders, the reflex that arrived whenever something good appeared to be offered and she couldn't yet see the cost of accepting it. "You don't have to. I know I don't. I didn't return your wallet because I wanted something in return." "I know that too," he said. "That's actually the reason I want to do something." He looked at her carefully. Not the look of someone offering charity. The look of someone making an argument, thoughtful, having already anticipated her objections. "What do you do?" She told him. The accounting work, the non-profit 3 days a week, the night school degree she hadn't fully put to use. She told him more than she intended, not because he pushed, but because he listened in a way that people rarely did, without the barely concealed impatience of someone waiting for their turn to speak. When she finished, she felt more exposed than she had planned, the way you do when you've said more than you meant to in a quiet room. "I have a position," Marcus said. "Junior financial analyst at Devereaux Capital. It's not entry level. There's real responsibility. The compensation is substantial. A candidate withdrew last week." He paused. "I'm not offering it because you returned my wallet. I'm offering it because in the last 10 minutes I've watched you calculate whether to trust me while pretending to drink your tea. And anyone who can do that without showing it can probably do this job." Taraji set her mug down. "You don't know anything about my work." "No," he agreed. "That's what interviews are for." She should have said something measured, careful, grateful, and non-committal. Instead, she asked, "Why did you come yourself? You could have sent someone." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, closer to the idea of one, considered and then mostly set aside. "The wallet wasn't the only thing I lost yesterday," he said. She waited. "I had a meeting on 52nd Street. It went badly. Not catastrophically, but badly enough that I left on foot instead of waiting for the car, which I almost never do." He turned his mug slowly on the table. "I hadn't been paying attention. I'd been paying very close attention to the wrong things for a long time, and it caught up with me yesterday in a conference room. I walked out and apparently dropped my wallet getting into the car." He looked up. "I came myself because I wanted to see what kind of person had found it. I'd been paying attention to the wrong things. I thought it might help to pay attention to a right one." The apartment was quiet except for the radiator. Taraji looked at the man across her kitchen table, the coat that probably cost more than her monthly rent, the careful way he held himself, the slight shadows under his eyes, that she recognized because she saw them in her own mirror and thought that he was lonelier than the photograph suggested. Not tragically, not obviously, but genuinely. "Send me the interview details," she said finally. "I can't promise anything, but I'll come." He nodded. He didn't look triumphant. He looked, if anything, relieved. They finished their tea. He stood to leave, and Taraji walked him to the door. He paused in the doorway and glanced back at the chessboard. "That's a E4 opening setup," he said. He learned the Ruy Lopez first. Now he's working on the Sicilian defense. Something shifted in his expression, a quiet recognition. Ambitious. Then he was gone, and she was standing in the open doorway of her small apartment with the smell of white flowers filling the kitchen and the feeling, quiet and unsettling and not entirely unwelcome, that something had just shifted in her life without asking her permission first. She closed the door, looked at Zion's chessboard, then went into the kitchen, refilled her mug, and sat down at the table. There was an interview to prepare for. She spent the next 2 weeks doing what she always did when something important was approaching. She prepared until she couldn't prepare anymore, then prepared a little more. She pulled her accounting textbooks from the shelf above the closet, pages dense with her small, precise margin notes. She reviewed financial modeling fundamentals, refreshed her understanding of private equity structures, watched recorded lectures online in the hours between putting Zion to bed and allowing herself to sleep. She filled pages of a yellow legal pad. She didn't tell anyone except Miss Gloria. "Devereaux Capital," Miss Gloria repeated, not looking up from her knitting. "The one on the news sometimes?" "Probably." Miss Gloria nodded. "We're the blue blouse, not the gray one. The gray one makes you look like you're apologizing for existing." Taraji wore the blue blouse. The Devereaux Capital Partners offices occupied 3 floors of One Vanderbilt in Midtown Manhattan, with a reception area that had ceilings high enough to make a person briefly uncertain of their own proportions. The receptionist offered her water in a glass, not a paper cup, which Taraji noted as an indicator of something she couldn't quite name. She met with 3 people before she met with Marcus. Andre, senior analyst, brisk and precise, who asked her technical questions about financial statements and appeared satisfied when she answered without hesitation. Imani from Human Resources, warm and organized, who walked her through the role's responsibilities with the efficiency of someone who had done it many times and still managed to make it feel personal. And Kofi, a portfolio manager younger than she had expected, who asked her how she made decisions with incomplete information and then actually listened to her answer. When Marcus appeared in the conference room doorway at the end of the 3rd meeting, he had the air of someone passing by who had simply decided to stop, casual enough to seem unplanned, deliberate enough that she knew immediately it wasn't. "How's it going?" he asked the room in general, though he was looking at her. "Very well," Taraji said, before anyone else could answer. Something in his expression moved briefly in the direction of that almost smile. He nodded, said something general to Kofi about a call that afternoon, and left. The offer came 4 days later. The salary maid her read the email 3 times to confirm she hadn't misplaced a decimal point. She started on the first Monday of November. Zion marked the date on the kitchen calendar in red marker and drew a small star beside it. She hadn't asked him to, and that made her throat tight in a way she hadn't prepared for. The work was hard and interesting and demanding in ways that required all of her, which suited her. She was strong on the technical side. Numbers had always been a language she thought in, rather than translated into, and she was careful and methodical in ways that faster analysts sometimes weren't. Andre, who had seemed so brisk at the interview, turned out to be a thorough and patient mentor once he recognized she was serious. Imani checked in with her every Friday for the first month with a friendliness that was professional and genuine at once. She didn't see Marcus often. His days operated on a different scale. Board meetings, investor calls, travel. When she did see him, it was in passing. A hallway, the elevator bank, once in the small kitchen on the 23rd floor at 7 in the morning, where she was making coffee and he came in with his jacket already off and his sleeves rolled to the elbows, looking like someone who had been at his desk since before the city woke up. "How's Zion doing?" he asked. It took her a second to follow. "Chess." He finished the Ruy Lopez. "Now he's studying the Sicilian defense. Ambitious." He poured his coffee. "How are you finding it?" "The work," honest answer, "always. It's the first time in years that I've felt like I'm operating at my actual capacity," she said. "It's uncomfortable in the way that good things sometimes are when you're not used to them." He looked at her with that direct, weighted attention. "That's a precise answer." "You said always honest." "I did." He picked up his coffee and moved toward the door, then paused. "There's a review presentation Thursday for the Harlem portfolio. Andre is leading. I'd like you in the room. I want to see how you read a live conversation. Okay, you won't be expected to present, just observe. I understand, Taraji said. Then, because she couldn't help it, I'll probably have thoughts. Marcus stopped in the doorway. I know, he said. That's why I want you there. The Harmon presentation was where everything began to fracture. The meeting was a quarterly review of a mid-sized manufacturing company Devereaux Capital had acquired 18 months earlier. Andre led it crisply and well. Taraji sat to the side with her notepad, listening to the numbers move back and forth across the room, watching the patterns in the projections, the way you watch the shape of something through fog. Not the detail yet, but the outline. Halfway through, she noticed it. A small anomaly in the quarterly operating costs, not large enough to raise an alarm in isolation, but inconsistent with the revenue trend in a way that didn't track naturally, like a crack in a wall that the paint had almost covered. This was where her knowledge of Benford's Law came into focus. While Andre continued his presentation, Taraji ran the mental calculation quietly. Benford's Law is a mathematical principle that governs the distribution of leading digits in naturally occurring datasets. In any real financial record, regardless of the company's size or industry, the digit 1 appears as the first digit roughly 30% of the time. Digit 9 appears least often, around 5%. When people fabricate numbers, they distribute digits more evenly without realizing it, because the human brain doesn't naturally think in logarithmic distributions. Taraji had learned about Benford's Law through a forensic accounting course she had completed online during late evenings at the kitchen table. Now, looking at the expense columns, she could see the distribution was skewed in exactly the wrong direction. She wrote 3 lines in her notepad and underlined the last one twice. After the meeting, when the other analysts were gathering their things, she caught Andre before he reached the door. I need to show you something. Andre looked at her notepad. His expression moved through several stages: dismissal, attention, and then a careful stillness that told her he had seen it too, now that someone had pointed. When did you notice this? He asked. During the presentation. He looked at her for a moment. Come to my office. What they found over the next 2 hours was not a crack. It was a fault line. Someone had been manipulating the operating cost reports for the Harmon portfolio for at least 9 months. Small adjustments, carefully distributed across categories, designed to keep the quarterly figures just inside the acceptable range while money was quietly redirected. The total amount was significant. The sophistication of it suggested someone who understood the reporting structure from the inside. Andre called Marcus. Marcus was there in 20 minutes. He stood at Andre's desk and read through Taraji's notes and supporting data with the particular stillness of someone absorbing something that changes the shape of a situation entirely. He asked 3 questions, each one precise. Andre answered 2. Taraji answered the 3rd. Marcus looked at her. You found this during the presentation? Yes. Not after? No. He turned back to the window. The city was dark now, the lights beginning their nightly argument with the sky. The person who managed this portfolio internally for the last year, he said slowly, is someone I've known for 11 years. The first person I trusted with real responsibility. He paused. The person who built the internal reporting system that he then spent 9 months quietly exploiting. The room was very quiet. Broderick, Andre said, barely above a whisper. Marcus didn't answer. He looked at Taraji with an expression she hadn't seen on him before. Not the careful directness, not the almost smile, not the composed distance of a man accustomed to controlling his environment. Something rawer than all of that. Something that looked, if she had to name it, like a man standing in the middle of a room that had just had its walls removed. Good work, he said. His voice was steady. But it cost him something. He picked up his phone and walked out of the office to make the call that would end an 11-year friendship before morning. The weeks that followed moved differently than the ones before them. The internal investigation was handled quietly and professionally. Outside counsel, a controlled process, no public statement until everything was confirmed. Taraji was asked to provide documentation of her findings twice, each time to a different set of lawyers, and each time she sat across from people in expensive suits and answered their questions in the same plain, direct way she answered every question, then walked back to her desk and returned to work. as though it were simply part of the job. It was Andre who told her, 3 weeks in, that the man at the center of it was Broderick Haynes, a senior partner, the first person Marcus had hired when Devereaux Capital was still a two-person operation in a rented midtown office. 11 years. The person who had built the internal reporting system he then spent 9 months silently exploiting. "How is he?" Taraji asked. She meant Marcus. Andre looked at her over the top of his glasses. "He's working," he said, which told her everything and nothing. She saw Marcus in the hallways. He was present, composed, thorough, the version of himself the office required. But there was something different in the quality of his attention now, something that had been loosened by what happened that night in Andre's office and had not quite resettled. Once in the elevator, he asked about Zion without being prompted. She told him about the Sicilian defense and how Zion had decided that the best chess player was the one who could think 4 moves ahead, something he had learned from a YouTube video at 6 in the morning on a Sunday. Marcus laughed, a real one, brief and unguarded, and for a moment the elevator became a different kind of space. Then the doors opened and he walked out as the CEO and she walked out as the junior analyst, and that was the shape of things. She told herself it was fine. With the same discipline she applied to everything else. The company holiday party was held in the first week of December, in a room on the 42nd floor with a view of Manhattan that made the whole city look like something carefully arranged by hand. Taraji wore a dark green dress she had bought on sale and her best earrings and stood near the windows with a glass of sparkling water. She was on a budget even at parties and talked easily with Imani and 2 analysts she had grown comfortable with over the past weeks. She was genuinely enjoying herself. She was not watching the door. She was absolutely watching the door. Marcus arrived 40 minutes in, said the things a CEO says at a holiday party with a warmth that managed to seem personal even at scale, then moved through the room the way he moved through everything. Deliberate, present, slightly apart from the current around him. He stopped at several groups. He listened more than he spoke. When he reached the window where Taraji was standing, he stopped, and for a moment they were both looking at the city rather than at each other, and the noise of the room seemed to pull back a degree. "It's a good view," she said, because something needed to be said. "It's the reason I took this floor," he said, "not the square footage. This specific window." She looked at him. "I wouldn't have guessed that about you. What would you have guessed? That you took it for the square footage?" He turned to look at her, and the almost smile arrived with slightly less hesitation than usual. "That's a fair assumption," he said. "Wrong but fair." They stood for a moment in the particular quiet that exists inside loud rooms when 2 people are paying attention only to each other. "Taraji," he said. He said her name the way he did everything, directly, as if he had considered it first. "I owe you something I haven't said properly. You gave me a job," she said. "That's substantial." "That was self-interest," he said. "I told you as much at the time." He turned back to the window. "What you found in that presentation, the way you found it, in real time, without making a performance of it afterward, that saved this company from something that would have been very damaging, not just financially, but in terms of the people here who work hard and trust that things are being done correctly." He paused. "Broderick was someone I defended publicly more than once. I thought I knew him completely." Another pause, shorter. "You knew something was wrong in a room full of people who didn't. That matters to me. Professionally and otherwise." The word otherwise landed quietly, without drama, like a door left open rather than thrown wide. Taraji looked at the lights of the city below. All those windows, all those rooms, all those people making their calculations and choices and small daily decisions about what to hold and what to let go. "I almost kept the money," she said. He looked at her. "In the wallet. I stood on that sidewalk for a full minute thinking about it. I thought about my electric bill and my son's winter coat and a letter from my landlord." She kept her eyes on the city. "I want you to know that. I'm not someone who didn't notice the money. I noticed it very much." He was quiet for a moment. "And then you called the number. And then I called." "Why?" She turned and looked at him directly. "Because it wasn't mine. That's the simplest thing in the world, and it's also the only thing. It wasn't mine." Marcus Devereaux looked at her with the full weight of that attention she had catalogued and never quite gotten used to, and this time it lasted long enough that she felt it in her chest, not uncomfortably, but undeniably. "Have dinner with me," he said. Not a performance, not a negotiation. Just a man asking a woman a direct question in a room full of people who weren't paying attention to either of them. Taraji felt the familiar tightness across her shoulders, the reflex that arrived whenever something good appeared, testing for the cost. This time she let it pass. "Zion goes to Miss Gloria's on Fridays," she said. "Friday," he said. "Friday," she agreed. They had dinner at a small Italian restaurant that Marcus chose because it had no dress code, no photographers, and pasta made by hand in the kitchen every morning. And it was the best meal Taraji had eaten in years, not entirely because of the food. They talked for 3 hours. She told him about her marriage and its quiet end, and what it had felt like to be 28 and alone with a 6-month-old and a night school schedule and a determination that refused to negotiate with despair. He told her about building Devereaux Capital from a single rented desk and the particular loneliness of success that arrived so fast you didn't have time to figure out who you wanted to share it with. He told her about his father, a high school math teacher in Connecticut who had died 4 years ago, and his father's worn accounting textbook that he still kept on his desk, unread but present. Taraji thought about the accounting textbooks on her own shelf, margins full of her small, precise notes. She didn't say anything about that yet, but she filed it carefully in the part of herself that recognized the shape of things that mattered. The months that followed did not move in a straight line because nothing real does. There were difficult conversations and careful negotiations of two lives that had been built independently and had sharp edges where they met. There were evenings when Marcus sat on the floor of the Harlem apartment with Zion. The chessboard between them, 800 pieces of an Amazon rainforest puzzle pushed aside, looking more at ease than in any photograph she had ever seen of him. There were mornings when Taraji stood in the kitchen and understood that she was happily in a way that was quiet and sturdy rather than loud and provisional, the kind of happiness that had been built from the bottom up rather than handed over. Taraji was promoted to senior analyst in March on the basis of her work and nothing else. Andre told her at her review that she had the best instincts for pattern recognition he had seen in a junior hire in 15 years. She thanked him, went back to her desk, opened the Harmon follow-up report, and kept working. On a Saturday evening in late spring, Marcus sat on the living room floor of the Harlem apartment, the apartment Taraji had renewed for 6 more months, while conversations about the next chapter were quietly taking shape, and Zion looked at him across the chessboard with the seriousness of someone who had been studying his opponent. "You ready?" Marcus asked. "I've been ready since Wednesday," Zion said. Taraji sat on the sofa with her legs folded beneath her, one hand around a mug of tea, the other holding a book, but her eyes were not on the page. She was watching the two of them. The game lasted 40 minutes. Marcus did not let Zion win. He had made that clear from the beginning. A win doesn't mean anything if the other person isn't trying. Zion had accepted this with the attitude of someone who found it the only reasonable position. 20 minutes in, Marcus noticed something happening. The 7-year-old was pushing him into a defensive posture in a way that was not entirely accidental. 30 minutes in, the position on the board was beginning to tell a story. 41 minutes in, Zion set his queen down and said, in a voice of studied calm, "Checkmate." Marcus looked at the board, followed every line carefully. He was right. There was no way out. He looked up. Zion looked back at him, working hard not to smile. "You set that up from move 17, Marcus said. It was not a question. Move 15, Zion corrected gently. A laugh came out of Marcus, real and full and completely unguarded, and that was the sound that made Taraji look up from the book she had been pretending to read. She saw Marcus Devereaux, the man who ran a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm who had just survived the most painful betrayal of his professional life and remained standing. Sitting on the hardwood floor of a Harlem apartment, laughing because a 7-year-old had beaten him in 41 moves. "Hold on a second," Marcus said to Zion. He stood up and crossed the room to where Taraji was sitting, leaning his forearm against the back of the sofa and looking down at her with the direct, weighted attention she had learned to read and never quite gotten comfortable with. "You know," he said quietly. "I've been playing chess for 20 years. "I know," she said. "And your 7-year-old son just beat me with a trap he set on move 15. Move 15, she confirmed. He was quiet for a second. "Did you teach him that?" "No," she met his eyes. "He figured it out himself." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and in that look there was something clear and unadorned, the kind of thing that doesn't require interpretation. "Taraji," he said. "Marcus," she said, "I want this to be permanent." She set the book down. "So do I. No drama, no performance. Just two adults, standing in the middle of lives that had been built from hard choices and early mornings and moments when no one was watching, telling each other the truth in a small Harlem apartment, on the floor where a 7-year-old was already resetting the pieces for the next game. Zion looked up from the board. "Are you two done? I want to play again." Marcus looked back at him. "This time I'm not losing the queen on move 11. Zion nodded, in the manner of someone who had not yet decided whether to believe that. Taraji leaned back against the sofa, picked up her book. This time she actually read, and listened to the sound of chess pieces meeting the board. Small, even, unhurried sounds. The sounds of an ordinary evening in a life that no longer had to survive on the margins of itself. The wallet lived in her memory the way certain small moments do. Not as the cause of everything that followed, but as the point at which what had been moving underground finally broke the surface. A piece of Berluti leather on wet pavement. A choice made in a second that seemed simple and turned out to be everything. The woman who had stood on Fifth Avenue in the October wind, calculating what the money could do, feeling the full specific weight of need, that woman had put it back anyway, not because she didn't notice the money, because she did, and still knew what was right. And in that quiet moment when no one was watching, everything else had already begun. Taraji's story isn't fiction about a wallet. It's a lesson about what actually creates value in the financial world, and why integrity, paired with real expertise, is the one thing no one can buy or imitate. There's a piece of real knowledge embedded in this story, worth taking with you. Benford's Law, the tool Taraji uses to detect the fraud, is a genuine mathematical principle used by forensic accountants and anti-fraud agencies around the world. Naturally occurring financial data always has the digit 1 appearing first roughly 30% of the time. When people fabricate numbers, they distribute digits more evenly without realizing it, because the human brain doesn't think in logarithmic distributions. If you work in finance, accounting, or simply want to protect yourself from financial fraud, look up Benford's Law. It's the kind of knowledge Taraji built for herself in the quiet hours after her son went to sleep, and it changed everything. The second thing, never underestimate what you're building in the hardest seasons. Taraji didn't know those textbooks with the margin notes would lead here, but she didn't stop filling them. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it today.